okay? And purpose of me bringing it up is I think we need to address a process, not address the issue, okay? We need to address a process. Because to this point, you know, I sort of volunteered myself to do a little due diligence, but it's not the way it should be done, and there should be a formal process adhered to this. Post a termination in which David terminated an employee, she filed a grievance, okay? And in light of that, we don't have any internal process for how to handle grievances, right? So I have an HR director, and purposes of me filling the role of an administrative role for the bid, I had her do a little due diligence as it relates to that grievance. And as a result of that, I think it warrants a formal process of evaluation, okay? Now, I have my ideas, okay, and I'll tell you that I think it ought to be, there ought to be a formal committee, and I think it ought to be an ongoing standing committee to deal with any future HR issues that relate to the CEO or president position, the top job, okay? Here's the issue, and because we don't have an HR director, I mean, we don't have someone who can handle HR issues. And so
that's human resources for your acronym.
So yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
So I think that in light of the fact that we are in the sunshine, okay, my recommendation is that it not be made up of all board members, because anything you vet has, and anytime they meet, they have to do so in the sunshine. And I don't think that's fair to all of the parties involved, both the person filing the grievance as well as the person receiving it. I think it's unfair to everybody. I think it shines way too much light on sometimes what can be a very sensitive and personal issues. HR shouldn't be handled that way. Yeah, so my recommendation is that someone on the board be appointed sort of an HR chair, and that we have a sort of subcommittee assigned to it, but they not be members of the board, and that person with those other individuals assigned be responsible in the future and in this particular situation with reviewing the grievance and then making a recommendation to the executive committee.
And again, I think that, I agree with you, I think that's a great suggestion, but I think that appointment of that needs to be the executive committee appointing those new subcommittees, and not, I mean, you know, no offense, but no, Mark just saying that's who it's going to be.
No, I don't.
That way it's more objective, it's more, you know, it's more transparent.
I don't have any issue with how it gets appointed. I'm just clear in terms of my rationale, in terms of why I think it ought to be structured that way.
If it's not somebody on the board, who can it be that would be on the board?
No, he said it would be a combination.
A person on the board. But once you put more than one person on the board, you're subject to sunshine, and then that's just an appropriate way to handle it.
So if it's one person on the board, who would be the other people who would be?
Outside.
Could be anybody.
Who's the outside?
Could be NPA.
Could be anybody. Could be anybody.
You're talking about like a professional.
I think you gotta have somebody with some HR experience. I think you have to.
Could it be the HR director of NPA?
Absolutely.
Are you willing to let them do that?
Willing to let her do it? Yeah.
And maybe a city
I
attorney.
mean, what do we have? We got 3 employees.
As well.
Right.
But it could be city attorney as well,
Yeah.
which is another great resource available to us.
Can I ask you a question? What is the bid? And it may sound kind of daft question, but for a legal purpose, what is it? Is it a city board? Is it therefore under the auspices of the city of Miami?
Yes.
So would it be then possible that if a staff person had a grievance, they would go to the city? They have an HR process.
I wouldn't.
I'm not suggesting.
I wouldn't urge that. I would really urge you to use it and to think more in terms of NPA.
Well, no, but I think in the future there has to be some independence there, and I would really I think those issues ought to be handled internally, and like the DDA does. I mean, the DDA has an internal issue that's addressed amongst the staff.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue here is not so much that we have an issue. We have an issue that a grievance has been filed against David. He happens to be the head of the organization, so you can't. In more situations, like if I have an internal issue with an HR, I'm the arbiter. It all comes to me. But in case of where somebody files a grievance or a complaint against me, I can't be the arbiter, obviously, because I can't. You need to have a process in place by which to handle that special situation. This may never ever come up again. Not ever. Not in 10 years. But you need to have a process in place. We just happen to have it coming to us now, so we need to address this process
And again,
immediately.
stuff like that, again, would come up, the executive committee could be dealt with now instead of waiting 2 months for the letter to get stale. So I agree, I think that's a great idea.
So the question is, how do we wanna move forward with this?
My-
It can be, look, it can be one person doing it, it can be a committee of one, it can be a committee of three, it can be a committee of 10. However,
But
the
you're
structure,
suggesting just one board member.
I don't think it can be any more. I don't think you can expose this issue to the sunshine. I don't think it's fair.
Is it,
Is it an ongoing issue, or is it something that you're talking about for future issues?
I'm talking about right now.
Right now,
We
plus
have-
the
we-
future.
We have an
To
issue
do this
now
well with the grievance
that's
stuff.
presenting the need to address it now, but whatever process we put in place now ought to be the process that we carry
Okay,
forward in the
no, I
future.
just wanted to be clear, in my mind, was it something that had to be acted upon now?
It has to be acted upon now.
So pick the board member, the HR director, and the city attorney, and you've got a committee of 3.
Do you need 3 or
Then Bob
two?
should let the executive committee choose.
Well, we're here, I mean, let's figure out.
But
who
then the
person
executive
should be.
committee is exposed again to that sunshine law, right?
Yeah, but I think the executive committee is just exposed at some point because there's gonna have to be a recommendation made.
But so,
Yeah.
I mean, that committee is gonna come
Right,
back
all
with
we're-
a-
all we're-
this committee is doing that same thing.
Well, no, all we're saying right now is we're gonna pick a board member and then the 2 outside people to be the HR committee. That's all we're saying we're doing right now.
That's all we're doing, and
Right.
then you empower them to then go do your due diligence.
Correct, exactly.
But does that have to be 3 people, or is 2
Oh, it
enough?
could be 2. It could
Probably
be-
2's even
Look,
better.
I mean, I'm throwing a number out there. It can be anybody you want.
My recommendation is 1 board member, and if you volunteer,
If you're HR
and
lady.
as long as it's not a grievance against you, they don't have a conflict.
Yeah, that HR
There's
person.
a lot of experience with dealing with employees, a lot. More, I was gonna say more so than anyone here, I don't know that to be true, but you have a lot of employees.
Yeah, no, look, I deal with a lot of issues, and certainly this issue, I vetted it a little bit, because obviously I got involved in it when it came up. And, so I've already done some of the due diligence, so it's a matter of just pairing a board member with this particular, you're saying I should be the board member?
Yeah.
It was suggested, from what I understood.
Are you
and
willing
your
to do
HR person.
Yeah, certainly, yeah, I am.
Does that color it somehow, because that HR person answers to you?
No, she's pretty fair. She doesn't really, remember, when it comes to HR issues,
Yeah, they.
she has very strict guidelines. I can't overrule her on an HR issue. She makes a recommendation.
What's gonna be I guess, the purpose of your review?
Purpose of my review is to, one, understand what kind of validity the grievance has in and of itself. And then-
Factually.
Yeah, and then if it has some merit, then I'm gonna make a suggestion in terms of how we, corrective action or how we address it. That would be my suggestion.
So you're saying, okay, so verify the facts, and then look if there's any implications to David on his actions.
David
as it
and or
relates
to
that.
the bid and whoever, and then
Right.
make a recommendation in terms of what I think we ought to do.
Consequences, if any.
Consequences and procedurally, yeah, I mean, maybe, I've done a little work on it, so I'm a little ahead of you on
Yeah, I
this
don't know,
process.
yeah.
So no, I'm saying that from a standpoint of I quite literally will step away from this process. I can make a recommendation tomorrow, because I already have it in my head, but because I've done the due diligence already. So for purposes of the process, I think that if you want to empower me to do that, then I'll formally address it, and whenever we meet again, I'll make a recommendation in terms of how I think it ought to be handled.
Art, for purposes of transparency, would you make your HR person available to us when, because we have questions, we can,
Absolutely,
both of you, we can all hear.
Maybe our next meeting, you know.
absolutely.
I'm okay with our doing this.
Sure.
So, instead of being unwieldy, why don't we just empower you and you'll use whatever resource you need? Or is that not a fair way of looking at it?
Certainly another way of looking at it, certainly.
With what, at least one other person?
No. Let him
Just-
be the committee of one, and he'll use whatever resource he needs. And we know him with Art, he's gonna use his own HR person. And having done employment law, a
Yeah,
good
that's
HR person is, I think you guys
If
know
that's what your
valuable
plan
as-
is, so if your plan's to, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we don't need to narrow the constraints, I don't know. Art would be very capable.
So we have consensus, is there a consensus here that it's Art?
I have no problem with that. I just think from Art's point of view, you would want to have another person so that he's, you know,
Well,
That's what he was reaching out.
he's above, reproach.
So who else on this
Well, he's got a person.
I'm okay with his
professional.
HR person.
got
His
a
HR
No, no,
person.
yeah, I'm not gonna, this will not be a committee of one, so that you don't have to worry about.
Alright,
So
so
let's
so
say
you
him
and your
plus one.
HR person.
Yeah,